Hi, I'm Ashton Schlachter, and the Sports Bar is now open. Neither of our hosts could make it this week, so the students are running the show. Let's get right to it. So, guys, what do we want to talk about?
Panthers football.
Okay.
It's about that time.
What else is there to talk about, honestly?
I mean, as far as Panthers football goes this year, the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is seeing Cam Newton's development in this year now that he's earned his contract extension. I don't know that he's necessarily earned a contract extension, but he's given it. And I think the drought of quarterbacks in the league, like we were talking about before the show, is there's about 10 quarterbacks in the league who are truly premier that you expect to take you to a Super Bowl. And this year, Cam Newton's got to move up in that echelon to take over and be that guy.
And I think the fans are going to be really disappointed if they see that he's getting paid so much money and then they're not getting anything from him. And I know that if he plays like last season with what felt like an interception every game and a fumble every game and several sacks and all that, I think that it's just frustrating to watch. And I'm not sure if the fans are going to stick with him as long as they did last season. Now saying that he's getting this money, I think people are expecting him to really kind of pull it out and make the connections he needs to get touchdowns and to get receptions and stuff.
Well, I mean, I hope fans don't think, hey, he got paid over $100 million and look, he's getting Peyton Manning, Tom Brady kind of money, blah blah blah. But I hope fans realize, and I think they do, that that is the kind of cash you have to pay out now in order to even have a guy, like you said, who's even possibly in that conversation to be someone who can take you to the playoffs. So, I think he's worth that. They've made it to playoffs, twice under his leadership. So.
Even if last year was a fluke.
Playoff. They put an asterisk next to that one. It made the playoffs with 7 wins.
Are wins. And playoff appearances are playoff appearances. And as a longtime Panthers fan, playoff appearances don't necessarily come every year. So it means a lot, I think, to the city of Charlotte.
Are y'all looking forward to seeing Michael Orr out there? Or?
See, that was what I was about to say was, what about the O-line this year? The O-line has been, I think, when you look at Cam Newton's career, had an amazing rookie year. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they were anchored by Jordan Gross. And I think that that's a gap that they never filled. They never took the time to address those. And yes, they needed receivers. They had some poor receivers outside of Steve Smith. And they went out, and when they got rid of him, getting Kelvin Benjamin was a step in the right direction. For a guy like Cam Newton who tends to sail the ball, having a guy like Kelvin Benjamin who can go up and get it at his highest point, he makes Cam Newton a lot better looking of a quarterback. But they've got to protect him in the pocket, and that's what a lot of his turnovers are. He's a little trigger happy because, I mean, if you're always having to move around in the pocket or you're always getting hit, that's what you expect. Any quarterback, Peyton Manning, same thing. If you put that much pressure on him, he's going to play terrible.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they've got Funchess out now behind too, so hopefully between him and Benjamin,
and Greg Olsen,
there won't be such an issue with overthrowing the ball, which I think was a big issue last year. Was the fact that he was so pressured, and because of that, he would just launch it, and which is I think what contributed to a lot of the interceptions was the fact that the other team knew that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, and I certainly think that having Funchess, Benjamin, Greg Olsen, those are all great targets, and like you say, if he sails the ball, they'll be there to help out. But if since they haven't really addressed the offensive line maybe in the way that we would have liked them to, I don't know if having those three guys be your top targets are going to help you if you have, a lackluster line as far as the passing game goes, because they're not going to be the quick release kind of receivers. Nope. They're big, they're strong. I'm going to get downfield, 15 yards, make a cut, and then they're looking for the ball. So I see him probably still scrambling around in the pocket, more than I'm sure he would like to, but. Hopefully if he can, break contain, which he's, really good at, he will have one more target in Funchess to, relieve that pressure.
And the last thing for the Panthers, as far as their offense goes, is can they figure out that running game? Because every year their stats tend to be very inflated due to Cam Newton. And Cam Newton's a huge part of that because of his ability to run. And they've got guys like Tolbert and Jonathan Stewart enough that they let D'Angelo Williams walk. Well, what about... looked this up and I found this, is that without Cam Newton in the offense over the last 2 years, running backs on the Panthers have averaged only 900 yards a year total.
Really?
Outside of having Cam Newton,
Oh,
and less than 9 touchdowns. So how much better? Every year they're a top 10 rushing offense, but it's because of Cam Newton.
because- yeah.
They've got to find a guy who can take over and be a 1,000-yard rusher, because it makes Newton that much more lethal. If you can run read option, or you know that the play action is there, that's what they got to do to open up their game, and I think it's been hidden.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look back to the running game, when they had Delhomme and the twin-headed monster that was
Deshaun
Williams
Foster.
and Jonathan Stewart there for
Oh,
at least for 1 year.
Yeah.
They were extremely good, and they lined up, they were in the eye, and we're gonna run it at you, and that they were very proficient at the running game during that period.
2,000-yard rushers in the same year.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be nice to see a little more of that, because, like you said, with the dependency on Newton, they've him being that dual threat. Defenses, have to stay with him way more than they would, for instance, a Delhomme, running the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that has covered a lot of their offensive line deficiencies. Newton has in that way, with running backs still being somewhat productive, but. It's like having another running back out there on the field.
Yeah, well, and I know that we talked a little bit about like the money situation with Cam Newton, but Luke Kuechly is a big one, at least from their cap space and all of that, because I know he's up for some more money, and people, I don't know if I personally think that he deserves more than what he's getting. I think he's getting the right amount. I know we're getting to the point where everyone is just paid so dang much to play football, and I hope they keep paying him because I want to keep watching, but it's a lot of money.
I think, though, but with Kuechly, it's more than just an on-the-field. On the field, he's an absolute beast. In my opinion, probably the best middle linebacker in the game, and the best we've seen probably since Ray Lewis, or going back a little bit farther than that. You've had guys like Brian Urlacher, guys like that. He's one of those guys, a three-down linebacker, and they have Thomas Davis also, who's come back strong. I mean, he won Comeback Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. And those are the guys that you need to build around, because they don't have the guys in the secondary yet. They got some young guys in the secondary, Josh Norman being one of those, who are growing into that position. But in the meantime, the ability of those linebackers to shut down the run and force teams to pass on them is gonna make them one-dimensional. And Kuechly and Thomas Davis can also play well in coverage too.
And we're not the Colts, we're not the Packers. We can't put 50 on you.
Yep.
So having those defensive strongholds, and keeping them, especially young guys like Kuechly, who's a symbol for, well, he's the best symbol, in my opinion, that the Carolina Panthers have, and one of the best ones the league has. So keeping that defense together is a huge part of their future success, hopefully.
And I think when you talk about that, like defense, you have to have a solid defense to take that pressure off your quarterback. I mean, when you look at teams like the Colts with Andrew Luck, how much did they fall short because the defense fell short? Andrew Luck wins games himself and does a lot of things on his own, and he's an amazing quarterback, probably 5 years from now the best quarterback in the league, maybe less. But right now, without a defense to really keep him in games, they fall apart. They fall apart. And Cam Newton is not as good of a quarterback as Andrew Luck. And so how can you put those expectations on him? They've done the right thing, and that's started to bolster their defense. And and it shows. Past 2 years they played Seattle, and they played them really close both games. And so if you can match up against Seattle, who's a perennial NFC champion, that's a pretty good way to go. And Seattle's built a good model to follow, I think, for the Panthers too. I mean, they're not the same team, but they're a similar team.
Yeah. Are there any guys who came up in the draft that you're excited to see? Because I don't know. I wasn't super excited for the Panthers. I mean, there wasn't anyone I was jumping about.
I think Funchess could be interesting. I don't necessarily know how much of a feature he's going to be. The Shaq Thompson pick was a little strange. I don't know what exact role he's going to play, but to have somebody who could potentially drop back to safety or play the linebacker spot is interesting when you consider that this is a league where a lot of times you have tight ends like Rob Gronkowski, and linebackers can't just hang with them. I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the Panthers, but players like Shaq Thompson are going to be more frequent in the league.
Yeah,
These
and he's
hybrids.
a great athlete too, and he's just a very fierce competitor, which I think is part of the reason they were so enamored with him. So I can see that benefiting them in the end, just because I think they need some more guys on the field who are just really all-around athletes as opposed to specializing in just their position. So I think it'll be interesting to see, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm expecting this year with them. I want them to do, I guess, well. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Panthers fan, but I think they've got the tools to do it.
I think I don't know. Like I said, with the O-line being the question that it is, the best teams in the NFL, the Cowboys have built the model that the best teams in the NFL are going to be the teams with really solid O-lines. And I mean, you look, the Packers, same thing. They have a great O-line that came together. Not necessarily high picks, but just a good unit.
Yeah.
And so for the Panthers, they probably need to put that together, or at least call plays in a way that'll minimize the problems of their O-line, the deficiencies that they do have.
Definitely.
Well, for this upcoming season, I don't necessarily see that team that's going to step in right away and claim the NFC South title from them necessarily. As far as if they might win the division. The Falcons, I really don't know what they are anymore.
Nope.
Same goes for the Saints. I don't know what direction those teams are going in. They have some pieces. They have some really nice pieces. Most of which are aging by the year, and that window of opportunity is closing. And then the Bucs, who are a young team, I actually think the Bucs have a chance to finish fairly high in this division.
I've seen a lot of things saying that this could be kind of their year
I think
well.
the Bucs could make a run at it as well. So I kind of see those two teams making a run at it.
And it's the NFC South where, I mean, historically, the team that finishes in last place finishes in first the next year. I mean, the Panthers making the playoffs last year was the first time in how many years? I mean, at least a decade where the same team ended up.
First time ever.
Oh, really? Okay, so first time ever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the Bucs could easily. That division is wide open, and it's shown you can make the playoffs with 7 wins in that division.
Are we going to see another 7
exactly.
playoff this year?
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah,
no, that's bad football.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's not something to be proud of.
But what about other teams? I mean, any other teams that you guys are looking forward to seeing this year?
I mean, I always enjoy watching the Packers play, and I get to go see the Packers Panthers game and the Colts Panthers game down in Charlotte. So I'm really looking forward to seeing those because it'll be fun to see the good football with the atmosphere down here, because I've never been to a pro football game live, so it'll be really cool. So, but those are always fun to watch too. I mean, it's you have to say that even if you're not a Packers fan, they're always entertaining games. It's fun to watch Clay Matthews rock somebody. So
two teams that I'm kind of excited to see how things play out. The Cowboys, we mentioned them. They have a great O-line. They have significant pieces on defense, and then Tony Romo, Des Bryant. Let's see how that situation plays out. They had a good season last year, but still kind of fell short of the ultimate goal. And then also, the Bills. I think the Bills are interesting. With
this I like.
You like to hear
this
that.
I like.
Shady McCoy, I think is a very interesting player. New coach. So I'm not saying they're going to win that division, because I can't not pick the Patriots. As much as I detest them, I can't not pick
It's hard
them.
to pick against.
Yeah, for that division. But, do you want to speak to the Bills? I mean,
no, I want to hear this.
This is exciting. People actually talking positive. It's actually a little scary to hear people talking positive about the Bills. I'm very
no expectations.
Exactly. I don't want those. We've kind of thrived on being the underdog. But when you talk about the Bills, I mean, Rex Ryan is a coach who took Mark Sanchez and a solid defense to back-to-back AFC championships, and along the way beat teams like San Diego with Phillip Rivers. They played the Colts with Peyton Manning. They beat good teams to be in those positions. And I see them trying to do a similar thing in Buffalo as far as how they minimize the play of the quarterback and lean on the run game. I've heard plenty of times this summer that Rex Ryan says, we want to give LaShawn McCoy 300 carries, 300-plus carries. Those are mega numbers. I mean, that is an offense that's going to be run through him. And they have other guys at the running back position, Fred Jackson, who can be solid, I mean, not amazing players. And that's what they lacked last year, was a true run game to fall back on. Yeah. And then when you look at the receiving core, they go and they get Percy Harvin, who, while he isn't a relative unknown in the league and has been a gadget player, he's somebody who can take one play 70 yards for a touchdown, and it changes the game. What was probably the biggest play in the Super Bowl between Seattle and Denver? It was that punt return. I mean, that just it took the wind out of the sails.
Yeah.
And you talk about adding him, and then Sammy Watkins is a year older. They added Charles Clay, the tight end from Miami. It's going to be a good team, and they have a great defense to fall back on.
And not adding salt to the wound, but a guy like Percy Harvin isn't the kind of guy that normally plays in Buffalo.
Nope. You're right.
So
You're right.
having that game changer kind of ability might really help them.
I kind of feel like McCoy's not either. I mean, it's going to be an interesting team. I feel like you kind of took good parts from a whole bunch of other teams and then combined them and then gave them Bills jerseys.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be an interesting mix of players, I think.
Definitely.
And there's a reason why there was a bunch of people that wanted them on the NFL Network's training camp show. Was that you got Rex Ryan, you got some huge personalities. Shady McCoy. He's having that party.
The ladies only party.
The ladies only party.
Yeah.
Now he's throwing it in Philadelphia because it's Buffalo, I guess. But so you got some huge personalities. So I think that even if the on-field stuff doesn't maybe play out the way you would like, just maybe off-season or the off-the-field kind of things will be just as entertaining.
It's definitely been the most exciting offseason I've had as a Bills fan. I mean, no doubt. As far as expectations for the team on the year, I mean, last year they went 9-7 with essentially no solid quarterback play. I mean, Kyle Orton had a few good games, but down the stretch was also terrible. They had no run game. I mean, Sammy Watkins was our best receiver, and he caught a little over 900 yards. I mean, those are okay numbers, but those aren't number one numbers, and it's because we don't have someone to distribute it. But we fell back on a defense who had 50-plus sacks last year, and yet we were the defense that blitzed the least in the entire league. Less than 15% of snaps we blitzed more than 4 guys. So that's a line of 4 people who got 50 sacks without ever sending pressure.
Well, that's a good thing to fall back on,
and
too.
Rex Ryan is going to send pressure. I mean, Rex Ryan built the scheme around sending pressure, and we're tailored to play that type of ball.
Okay.
Well, sorry.
All of this talk now, football, I'm just so ready for it. But we got to talk about the NCAA. We have to get to some college football. I got to know, who are you interested in? Because I know that I've got my teams, but I want to know how they match up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, just looking at some preseason favorites according to the experts, experts in quotations. But obviously Ohio State has to be in the mix. I mean, defending champions. They return so much talent. You have a guy like Braxton Miller who's now going to be a wide receiver. Because which I heard a comment from him who he said, I always kind of considered myself the best athlete in college football, never the best quarterback. So maybe he'll take that in stride and really kind of develop into a good receiver
or 15 returning starters. That's a massive number,
especially for a defending national champion. And normally you have half those guys going to the NFL,
if even.
So it was obviously a very young team.
Braxton Miller, I mean, could easily, we talk about Percy Harvin. He's going to play the role that Percy Harvin played in Urban Meyer's Florida offenses. And that's lethal because it's a great complement to a guy like J.T. Barrett. And it opens up that ability to run screen plays where it's like a double out, you throw out to the sideline and then he throws a touchdown. I mean, it just opens up all sorts of possibilities for an already lethal offense anchored by Ezekiel Elliott, the running back. Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, last year was pretty impressive as an overall unit, but Ezekiel Elliott was who I enjoyed watching the most. I mean, he had huge playoff.
And I think that we've just seen the beginning of him too. I think that this year, I think that last year was amazing, but I think this is his breakout year. I think that we're going to see some stuff that, is going to go down as some of the most impressive football that I think we're going to see.
They're double-digit favorites in every single game this year. Every single game.
Which I think is kind of dangerous if you're an Ohio State player, and especially if you're an Ohio State fan, even if you just won the national championship. But you mentioned the quarterback situation. Barrett, Jones, who do you think wins that battle? Because you have Barrett who leads them all season.
I know.
And and then he gets hurt, and then Jones just wipes the floor with Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game and has a terrific
I think they'll give
playoff.
Barrett a chance. I think they'll look at him, and I think they'll give him a game or two to kind of say, I can come back from injury, I can do all this, but he's not going to get much time. I think that if they give him anything, it's going to be a pretty short-lived, one mistake, and they're going to flip him out pretty quick.
Of all the quarterbacks on the roster, J.T. Barrett is the prototypical quarterback out of them.
Definitely.
Cardale Jones has a rocket arm. I mean, absolute just 80-yard passes are nothing to him. But as far as decision-making and accuracy, I think because of the way he played in the playoff, which a lot of times is, I'm not to take away from the games that he had because they were impressive. A lot of that can be momentum. A lot of that can be, all of a sudden I'm thrown in and this offense is already clicking. I just have to come in and not make mistakes. And I think that Cardale Jones made a mistake by not declaring for the NFL draft. He had the chance, and why come back with all that's on the roster when chances are somebody's going to take a shot on you because you did what you did and you won a national championship.
Yeah.
Well, his arm being as good as Cardale Jones, that is, his arm being as strong as it is, they were able to out-athlete even Alabama. They were running by Alabama, and then he could just, like you say, just chuck it as far as he could down the field and show off that awesome arm. So I think Barrett will probably end up getting it just because of his consistency at the position and his accuracy. Because he can't make that huge throw. But once people start game planning for Cardale Jones playing really deep coverage and kind of
well, their
prepping
receiving
for that.
core is going to help him a lot too because they've got Corey Smith, they've got Curtis Samuel, they've got Noah Brown. I mean, he's got a lot to work with, which I think is what's really going to make the difference for him.
And a stellar running game. I mean, we already touched on it, but a stellar running game to fall back on. So if it's Cardale Jones, I mean, what sets up a play action better than Ezekiel Elliott? That's what made them so lethal.
And I thought Ezekiel Elliott was the best running back in all of college football last year. I mean, I think if he could have came out for the draft, he would have been the number one running back taken.
No offense to our own Marcus Cox. We all love him, and his stats honestly weren't that far off.
He's just now coming into the age of being a player.
It's hard to compare from a player from App State to Ohio State.
Absolutely.
So. Speaking of Marcus Cox and App State, they go down and they play Clemson September the 12th. Clemson is picked to win the ACC, which the ACC is a conference that's up, down, in the middle, but they're returning a lot of talent. So I don't know. Like, do you think that the ACC is a conference? Do you think Clemson being pegged number one is just because people don't maybe know what to expect coming out of the ACC?
There's a lot of uncertainty.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that the ACC isn't necessarily going to be as strong this year. I think that a lot of teams aren't returning a lot of starters.
Florida State.
Yeah, there's
notably.
I think a lot of questions with what the ACC is going to do. So I think, I saw several people, tweeting and stuff about after the Clemson ranking came out saying, oh gosh, we're playing Clemson. We thought we had a shot. I stick by my original statement that I had a couple shows back that I think we can beat them or at least hang in with them. I don't think that this ranking is all of a sudden saying, they're going to be incredible or, there's something that we didn't expect. I think it's just a reflection of what the ACC as a group is looking like, which is just it's not the group that it's been in years past. And like you said, it can be kind of up, down, and all around the place.
Yeah,
so.
and the goal for Appalachian is to be one of the best teams in the group of five.
Yeah.
I've seen them, in the extended top 25. I saw them 50th and 53rd, and that's ahead of a lot of ACC schools, which, the Wake Forest of the world, we all know they're not making the playoff.
Yeah,
but we'll see, and I think the expectation is to be competitive.
We get a good game out of Clemson. We get a good game at Georgia Southern. I mean, fans will be happy. I think the team will be happy. So I think Satterfield will be happy, which is the important thing.
And going back to Clemson, the thing about Clemson is they tend to, how many years have they come in, maybe not ranked as high as they are right now, but they tend to get into a stride and then fall off.
Yeah.
So, and really, if I was going to really call it, I would say they'll lose to Georgia Tech at the end of the year because for some reason, no one can stop that triple option.
Yep.
And it always, my dad is a huge Clemson fan, and I see it. He's always frustrated, like, we're going to lose to Georgia Tech every year.
It's the Clemson 10-2 curse.
Yep.
They're going to have a great season, but ultimately fall short.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think we need to talk football more often and or just make the hosts go away. I think we can handle this on our own. All right, guys, it's last call. It's all we've got time for Sports Bar today. So before we go, feel free to contact us at www.watchapptv.com. Until next time, I'm Ashton Schlachter, and we'll see you next week at Sports Bar.